This is Will Friedle, the voice of the future Dark Knight, Batman Beyond, and you're listening to the DCAU Review, hosted by Cal and Liam, streaming at DCAUreview.com and on your favorite podcast app. And remember a few things. First, Dana deserves better. And second, I am Batman.
In the year 2039, Gotham City has no heroes. Its people, no hope. Its youth, no future.
Evening, boys and girls. Who's up for some laughs?
Terry McGinnis was part of the problem.
Freeze right there.
You can't control your temper, and you'd better if you expect to get anywhere in life.
Yeah, I'll be a big success, just like you.
Until a moment of violence brought him to the door of a man named Bruce Wayne.
Let's put a smile on his face.
Leave him alone. Once known as the Batman.
Man, you're something. You okay?
Now, the Dark Knight will rise again to drive the shadow of evil from the streets of Gotham. Let's go! Supervillains, beware! There's a new Batman in town. Batman Beyond. You're pretty strong for some clown who thinks he's Batman. I am Batman. Justice returns to Gotham. Welcome to my world.
Welcome, everybody, to episode 242 of the DCAU Review. I am one of your hosts, Cal. With me, my good friend, good brother, the man that runs our Twitter account. That's right, it's Liam. Liam, welcome to the first podcast of the year 2023, if you're listening to this on the original debut date. If not, maybe it's somewhere else in the future.
Yes, whether it's on the first Saturday of 2023 or 50 years from now, whenever now is, we thank you everybody for listening and for joining us as we, for the first time in a while, dive back into the world of Batman Beyond.
That is right, Liam. We looked back, and it was hard to believe. In the year 2022, we covered 4 whole episodes of Batman Beyond, and as we have discussed, I think probably both of the times that we covered the show last year, part of that is because of a lack of content remaining on the Batman Beyond schedule. We've covered a lot. We actually are wrapping up the official end of season 2 with this episode that we are reviewing today, which, if we did not mention, is an interesting one to say the least. It is the Batman Beyond episode Ace in the Hole. So we get the origin stories of Ace the Bat Hound and how he came to be, as we will get into our review here in just a little bit. Before we do that, of course, we are going to get the official IMDb synopsis for this week's episode, brought to you by The Pod Tower. Head over to youtube.com/thepodtower, and you can get every single one of our Batman Beyond reviews up until this date available at youtube.com/thepodtower. Not only do you get some great content from us, but other great DCAU content creators as well. Liam, this episode originally aired here in the United States on the Kids WB back on August the 19th, 2000, meaning we passed, just a few months ago, we passed the 22-year anniversary of this episode's debut.
That's right. So this is the synopsis for Ace in the Hole, which was written by Hilary J. Bader, directed by James Tucker, with music by Christopher Carter and animation by Coco and Dong Yang. And that synopsis reads as such. When Ace spots the man who abused him into becoming a sport-fighting dog, he chases him and gets lost from his guardians. Now, if I had to guess, that's one of those ones that someone who maybe didn't speak English as their first language wrote.
Mm-hmm. Or maybe just someone that was poorly educated on sentence structure.
Also possible. Not a crime, just an observation.
This is why we love the official IMDb synopses.
That's right.
As they are the official ones as sourced from the Internet Movie Database. So, hey, don't hate us, and don't hate the people that created them. They're official at this point, you know? But yes, as we get into our synopsis here, we will get into our review of the episode and give our own personal synopsis. So, Liam, this episode starts out as we see Terry is driving Bruce around, and they're, I guess, going to some appointment for Bruce. So,
the chiropractor. It says it right on the building.
There you go. Well, Bruce has to go to the chiropractor after all those years of almost getting his back broken by Bane and, you know, all those stab wounds and things that the Joker attempted to kill him with and all that. All those things that he mentions in that first episode, I believe, where he's trying to discourage Terry from taking on the Bat mantle. But Terry decides he's going to wait outside and take Ace for a nice little walk, and upon there, almost immediately, loses control over Ace as Ace seems to recognize somebody and takes off after them and breaks away from Terry. He attacks this man that pulls out a gun immediately and begins attempting to defend himself. Ace continues his attack, relentlessly attacking this guy, grabs him by the wrist and takes him down to the ground, knocks the gun out of his hand, and the man continues to finally escape. He rips kind of his sleeve, leaves it dangling in Ace's mouth, and takes off and jumps into a car right through the window. He just went Ricky Bobby style right in, no door necessary, just jumps right in through the window. And Ace continues to pursue even as the car speeds off. Speeds off, I guess? Flies off? Hovers off?
Hovers off.
As the car hovers off, as it is a levitating car, as we see. But Ace takes off, and unfortunately, Terry has lost sight of him at this point. And that's kind of what we're setting up for the main thread of our story here, is that this episode could have been called Where's Ace? Following up to our last episode, which was, of course, Where's Terry? Which you can hear in the archives at DCAUreview.com or on the Pod Tower, of course. But our thread here is that Terry is out on the lookout, trying to find Ace now via the Batmobile in full Batman garb.
How come you never put a tracer on the mutt?
He never ran away from me. I ran the serial number from the gun. According to the records, it was destroyed in the police impound.
So the guy had an illegal blaster.
We need to find out why. Who he is. What he needs that gun for.
As soon as I find Ace.
No. Now.
You want me to just leave him out here?
Ace is a survivor. He'll be all right.
I hope somebody told him that.
Radioing back to the Batcave, questioning Bruce as to why he hadn't placed some sort of tracking device on Ace in the event of this happening, and Bruce simply tells him, well, he's never run away from him before, so he didn't think he had to. So Terry is out and about attempting to find Ace, but Bruce tells him that Ace is a survivor and that he's sure he'll turn up at some point, and much to Terry's chagrin, which is ironic because if you recall, he and Ace didn't have quite the warm friendship for some time. They didn't really seem to like each other. Or maybe Terry liked him and Ace just didn't care for him. But of course they had some bonding moments as the series went on here. So Terry's really taken a liking to him and is sort of flabbergasted when Bruce tells him to turn in and head back searching for the person that Ace was attempting to attack. So of course we get a tragic moment where Terry just misses him, and we get this repeated throughout the episode where they just miss each other, which feels like a classic children's storytelling device here.
Very homeward bound. Very
just heartbreaking. Just like, no, he's right there. Wait. But we see Ace looking up into the sky as the Batmobile speeds off, and he's left sad. But Terry has to go back to the Batcave to chat with Bruce about just who the identity of this man that Ace attempted to attack was.
That's right, and based on Terry's description and the Bat computer's magic face thing, they are able to composite a close enough look to our perpetrator and figure out that it isn't none other than a man named Ronnie Boxer, who has a bit of a criminal past, and in this case being a notorious promoter of dog fights.
Naturally.
And they sort of put two and two together at that point that must be how Ace knows him, and there's a little bit more urgency now as we go through, and we kind of cut to the next morning, and Bruce is on the phone with Animal Control, sort of giving a description, and he and Terry speak a little bit more as Terry says that he's going to hit the streets, that he has his own methods of finding out who this Ronnie Boxer guy is and where he is.
His methods is wearing the same hat that he wore when he was disguised as a pizza delivery man.
That's right.
In the Shriek episode.
This is his Matches Malone.
And a terrible New York accent.
New York accent and an old-timey World War I pilot's hat for some reason.
Naturally.
But yes, as Terry goes off, we actually get a flashback. I'm not sure who's having this flashback because the memory starts before Bruce and Terry meet.
Mm-hmm.
But we see Ace being taken from the pound by this Ronnie Boxer fellow, and we see him sort of being trained, and there's obviously obvious implications of abuse if you've ever read a news story about what the dogs who end up in those dog fighting rings go through. It's pretty brutal, and they do as much as they can to imply that without getting any notes from Standards and Practices, I imagine.
Come on, you scrawny little mutt. Show me what you're made of. Go for it. Go for it. That's it, fella. Tear it up. I want you mean.
And then we cut to a little bit later on in the story when Ace has grown up into a full-grown dog from his when we first meet him as a puppy in the flashback, and there's as he's about to fight a weird giant muscular bulldog thing.
Mm-hmm.
Chekhov's weird giant muscular bulldog thing. The cops break in to break up the ring, and Boxer is arrested, and Ace escapes, but we then cut to a little bit later. It's starting to snow. Apparently, this is a Christmas episode. We should have reviewed this one over the holidays.
Yeah, tweet us. Do you think this is a Christmas episode? There's a shot where he looks up into the window, and it seems there's holiday decorations.
Mm-hmm.
It's snowing
outside.
Bruce is putting flowers down in Crime Alley for his parents, which is the thing you put flowers on people's graves during the holidays. Seems like this is a Christmas episode.
That's right. Kind of feels like it's on. It's no less of a Christmas episode than Bullet for Bullet was, as it turns out, I think. But yes, we see the first meeting here as Ace is scrounging for scraps in the alley, and as Bruce goes into the alley with a post-Alfred chauffeur dropping him off in front of the alley, and as he is about to place the flowers down, we see a member of the Joker's gang is there trying to unsuccessfully rob him, and Bruce dispatches him pretty quickly, but as he goes to place the flowers down, the thug returns and has some sort of weapon that he's about to hit Bruce with, and before we can really see if Bruce would have had time to react, Ace springs into action and saves Bruce and actually gets injured in the melee. And so once Bruce is done dispatching the clown, we cut back to the chauffeur waiting in the car, and we see that Bruce has decided to bring the dog home with him, and they've been fast friends ever since. And we get a sense here, and I actually really love this part because, and someone pointed this out to us on our Instagram this week when we posted that we would be covering this episode, that there's a little bit of poetry in him, Bruce, when he's never been more alone he's going to the place where his family died, and he meets like his new best friends in the same place. There's like a death and rebirth and
that is good
thing with him finding Ace in Crime Alley. So I really liked that little bit of poetry there. But we cut back to present day at that point, and Terry's hot on the trail, and in his unfortunately he doesn't have a fun alliterative name as far as we know for his alter ego like Matches Malone, but
he would be like Pilot Pat or something like that because of his pilot's hat. Or maybe it'd be like Propeller Pete.
Wally Wings.
Now we're talking. Tweet us your best ideas for an alliterative Terry disguise name. But yes, he is in full garb, and he has tracked down this person that he believes is a lead that can get him to Boxer, who he doesn't really have to tell much of a story, and there's no real backlash or investigation from this person who immediately believes him, the stranger that walked up to him and told him he's got a dog that he wants to use to fight. And so he gives him this number for this person, and tells him to recommend that he sent him. And of course, as Terry, just before this, we saw the dog catcher had caught up to Ace and nearly captured him, but of course he escapes, and the dog catcher removes his hood, and we find out that it is in fact the corrupt Dog Pound member that we had seen briefly before. This character who was feeding the dogs essentially, or I guess not literally feeding the dogs, but he was giving the dogs and funneling the dogs to Boxer. So in this case, we know that this is not a good step here for old Ace, as Terry is able to get this phone number, as we mentioned, for this for Boxer. And in the very next scene, they just miss each other. It seems like that Ace has found part of Terry's get-up. There's a bandage that he was wearing, and Terry drops the bandage on the ground, and as he turns the corner, Ace turns the other corner and finds the bandage and seems to be in hot pursuit of Terry, and wouldn't you know that's when the dog catcher catches up to him and captures Ace, and says he's got a special place for him. So we get the next scene. Is the dog catcher attempting to sell Boxer his own dog back to him. Boxer recognizes him, and he takes him from him and says that it must be fate, it's destiny that they end up together, that he's got a job for him yet.
Shut your yap. What you doing here, Matty? I don't have time for games.
Got a dog for you, Mr. Boxer. He's a real contender.
You trying to cheat me? Selling me back my own mutt?
What? I swear I...
Slag it. Must be fate, me and this pooch. We were meant to be together, ain't that right, boy? Put him below. I'll deal with him after the games. If nothing else, he'll make a nice playmate for the other dogs.
At this point, Terry is still in pursuit, attempting to find Ace, thinking that he should have found him by now, that someone should have found him, one of the shelters should have picked him up, and Bruce says that he's found another lead, and he's traced the phone number to an address and sends Terry to this address. And as Terry gets in, he recognizes right away that this doesn't appear to be a normal apartment, as there's lots of chemicals around, and he starts reading different labels off to Bruce, and before he can even finish whatever the last name of the last chemical was, Bruce guesses it right off the bat, and it turns out to be this chemical compound called Serostone, which, as we pointed out before we went on the air, eventually becomes a linchpin to another episode later on in the run here in the season 3 technically, but was probably in development based on what we know about the series. on or around the same time as this episode was. So Sarah Stone, Chekhov's Sarah Stone, is the chemical here that is developed, and he's wouldn't you know it, as Terry's doing his investigation, he's interrupted by Boxer himself, who begins just wildly shooting guns around flammable chemicals, which causes a fire in the apartment, and Terry focuses on putting out the fire so that the entire apartment building doesn't burn down. But of course, this allows Boxer to escape. And then we see him reunited with Ace, where he picks him up and decides he's going to take him on this floating craft that he has now, this ship liner, which is where the dog fighting ring has moved to now that we are 50 years in the future. They're no longer having it in the abandoned Gotham Square Gardens. We're having it out on ships in the middle of the ocean. International waters, you know?
That's right, yeah.
Got to escape the police somehow. But we do see that he has Ace loaded on here, and Terry has managed to track him to this spot. Well, actually, no, Terry doesn't track him.
Yeah,
Bruce tracks him via the web.
That's right.
The good old web.
The world's greatest internet detective.
He's just out there on the web, just Googling, where is the dog fighting? And it just comes back with this amazing result that it's happening on a liner. So he sends Terry to the ship, and thankfully that's the right ship. He picks the right one right away, and Terry remembers that he can turn invisible, which avoids some conflict with some of the bad guys. We give him a lot of crap, Terry doesn't always remember that he can turn invisible.
That's true.
He not only remembers it this time, he remembers it a second time later on here. But as Terry is walking onto the ship, he walks past some very steroided up dogs, as we learn, of course, that this chemical was a growth hormone developed by Wayne Powers, and it's being used and injected into these dogs for them to become monsters. And Batman walks out past these creatures and into the actual arena, and realizes he's here trapped. Boxer is on the outside. There's sort of a glass dome encircling this cage, and Terry's kind of stuck at this point, and Boxer gives this whole diatribe about how everything's automated now. And
things are a whole lot simpler than they used to be, Batman. Everything's automated. Don't need cameramen, don't even need handlers. I control all the action with a touch of a button. You want to know what's behind door number 1, Batman?
One of your Sarah Stone creations. I saw them.
Not this one, you didn't. He's my first experiment with the stuff. Guess I went a little overboard. I was gonna put him out to pasture, but I always knew I'd find a use for him.
Down, boy. I'm not gonna hurt you much.
He releases what is can only be described as the most terrifying Glenn Murakami dog creation you could possibly imagine.
Yeah, it's pretty wild. We'll certainly talk more about that in visual. But this giant mutant bulldog, who they don't point this out, but it appears to be the same dog that Ace was about to fight in the flashback, however many years ago that was at this point. But yes, he's this giant, the size of an elephant now, and Terry tries to sort of calm it, but it's clear that it's just out of its mind.
I think it's bigger than an elephant. It's like its foot. It was able to devour Terry's foot at one point. It's like
devours Terry whole at one point.
Yeah, it's like Rancor size.
It's
like
there's definitely some. Actually, in the way it's defeated too, there's some Star Wars Rancor in this for sure. But yeah, Terry's a little bit overmatched, as Ace is still in the kennel next to Mr. Boxer, and finally as Terry's trying out different gadgets, as you said, like his invisibility, like his batarangs and ropes, and he has the weird his belt buckle is also like a buzzsaw thing.
Super cool.
He only uses it a couple times in the series, but he finally is able to penetrate this glass dome that he's trapped in with the with this monster dog, and as he's starting to escape, there's some jostling around, and the cage that Ace is in is damaged, and Ace is able to break free and takes off after Boxer, and so they have a showdown. Meanwhile, Terry, who thought he had the dog subdued, is back on the offensive and really begins to get the worst of this fight, as we see, and we do get a resolution to this, but we get Boxer out on the ledge of the ship, and we just see Ace take a running, diving leap at him, and then it cuts back to Terry. So we're left to wonder about the fate of Mr. Boxer, but Ace returns and makes a dramatic entrance back into the dome, and right as his suit is all torn up and all of his gadgets are proving no use, and Ace is able to buy just enough time where Terry can set off an explosion in the ceiling and drop a bunch of debris on top of the head of the creature, which finally sort of brings it down. He also electrocutes it to try to slow it down. So Terry and Ace are victorious just barely, and we then at that point cut back outside to where we see that thankfully, because there's a propeller on this floating airship, that actually caught Mr. Boxer and prevented him from falling to his death. So the bad guy is captured, and as we see, we cut back to Wayne Manor, where Bruce is sort of sitting quietly, and then we see the clock tower entrance from the Batcave open, and we see Ace run out, and then man and dog are reunited as we wrap up the episode with a nice little reunion here.
Indeed. Yeah, so I guess we can. It's a happy ending after all. It's a nice little Disney ending. Everybody's happy.
Is.
Dog's licking his owner's face. A nice little dog and owner hug. So I went back and forth between giving this a 5 and a 6 as far as the plot is concerned. It's kind of goofy. I mean, it's good. It's good because I think one of the first questions that you may ask if you're starting Batman Beyond is, why does Batman have a dog? Why does Bruce have a dog? Where did the dog come from? How did he end up with this dog? How old is this dog? Stuff like that. How is he trained so well? Why doesn't he like Terry? Why doesn't he like any other people? So we do get the backstory. It's nice that we finally get the origin story of Ace.
Yeah.
But it is an extremely goofy plot. A giant mutant dog, steroided up dog is the final boss of the episode.
That's our big action piece. There's not a lot of action in this otherwise.
Yeah, the only other action beat is the sort of minor scuffle at the apartment that is had. But yeah, I mean, like I said, there are some elements there that play on like children's cartoons where they're just missing each other, and there's a lost animal, and you're rooting for the animal to get found, and the animal's in danger, and all of those elements. But at the end of the day, the plot is around a guy that fights dogs, and his mastermind plot is to jam chemicals into his dogs until they're bigger than a house. Okay, all right. And Terry has to defeat the dog, and the guy doesn't really get, like, if Ace had mauled this guy to death at the end of it, maybe maybe we would feel a little bit better about it. But
just a nice shot of Ace biting through his trachea.
Yeah, just something. But then he wouldn't be Batman's dog, right? Batman doesn't kill.
Right.
Neither do his dogs.
Exactly.
So, it's sort of it's a fine ending, but I settled on a 5 out of 10. It's a fine episode. There's some fun in it. There's some good moments, but it's kind of goofy. It's a kind of goofy late season 2 Batman Beyond episode.
Yeah, I went 6 out of 10, so just 1 point higher. I think I liked it because we get so few episodes in these later ones that focus on Bruce at all. Like, he's such a background player in these later episodes. We've talked about that a lot. When the second season started, there was kind of a mandate that we want this to be kind of a a kid version, but sort of a Buffy the Vampire Slayer, a WB style show. And that means focus on the kids, focus on the high school. The villains are all, you know, either high school students or teachers mostly. So this has like some DNA, I feel like, of an original Batman the Animated Series episode, and like the type of villain. It's not a mutant. I mean, he does fight a big weird mutant monster at the end, but it's just a guy. It's just like a scummy guy who's who's personally harmed, Batman's dog or Bruce's dog in this case, but
he's basically the sewer king of dogs.
Kind of, yeah. Hope not.
$1 in the bad episode jar. My bad.
There's some implications
there. Oh no.
But yeah, so I think I liked it a little bit more for that reason, just because one, it focuses a little bit more on Bruce, like we already talked about. I liked the element of Bruce finding him in Crime Alley. I think is a really sweet little bit, and you sort of represent that Bruce is very alone, and then the last shot of the episode when he's sitting in the house by himself again, and it's very isolated, and then the door opens and Ace runs out. I think it's a very sweet sort of ending. So, I appreciate it for those reasons. Like I said, I think it's a good change of pace as far as just what we generally are used to with these later episodes of Beyond. So
sure,
for those reasons, I went a little bit higher.
Yeah, that's fine. I think part of it also just felt like we were like one scene away from it being a PSA against dogfighting rings. Yeah. Like, yeah, we all hate dogfighting. It's not good. Nobody in their right mind should support it. Yeah, let's move past it. All right, Liam, let's move on to our animation and visuals. Hilary J. Bader wrote the episode. It was directed by acquaintance of the show, James Tucker, and it was a Coco Dong Yang co-production. Let's talk about visuals. What did you like? What did you not like? What stood out for you? Let's chat it up.
Yeah, because there's not a ton of action. The big thing is probably literally and figuratively is the weird dog monster. As you said, there's a little bit of rancor in it, and it's got a very like distressed face.
Do you know what it reminds me of? It kind of reminds me. Do you remember the Men in Black cartoon that was on around the same time? Feels like something that would have been. I mean, granted, I didn't watch.
Yeah,
but like maybe the last 10 seconds of an episode when it would come on before the new Batman Adventures or something. We weren't a big Men in Black family, but that it just looks like one of those designs that you would see based on the coloration, based on the way that the eyes are all kind of tiny and beady, and the giant exaggerated mouth and teeth and all that stuff. Just looks like it almost doesn't fit in this design realm, and I'm sure.
Right.
Yeah, I jokingly credit it to a Glenn Murakami design because he seems to always have.
It looks kind of like the Collector from Superman the Animated Series. It's all in like the chin and the thick black outline around the lips and the jagged teeth and all of that. It's very
Mr. Murakami has a very unique style when it comes to coming up with these monstrous looking creatures, as we know. So I have
if it wasn't him, he must have had like a pass on it at some point.
Absolutely.
So that fight is like, again, as brutal as you can have, and as far as Terry's, the suit gets all destroyed, which is kind of fun. You see like the inner circuitry and all of that is fun, and the different types of gadgets that Terry pulls out that he gets to use because he's fighting something that isn't human in this episode. So he gets to be a little bit more brutal in his fighting, and then there's some fun other smaller visual nods, which I can get to in a moment here. But what stood out for you?
Yeah, I think we already talked about a lot of it. I do love the Batsuit getting destroyed. There isn't a ton of action, but I do love the snow that sort of drives home that scene of Bruce being out in the cold and alone in Crime Alley, and it very much adds to the sympathy and empathy that you want to feel towards not only Bruce but the dog, who's also alone by himself in the cold, in this cold dark alley, and then the two of them together end up, you know, going essentially back to the warmth of Bruce's car. So I love that. You know, some of the design choices, you know, the puppy version of Ace was absolutely adorable. It was a little too cartoony in a couple places.
Scrappy-Doo.
Yeah, there's definitely some Scrappy-Doo in it. Well, he's a Dane. He's a Dane mix, as we learn. There's. I will say that the characters looked a little bit off model from normal. Everybody looked a lot more angular. I feel like there's a couple of odd choices. There's the scene early on where Terry's in the Batmobile and flying throughout the point of view, the camera cuts, they keep cutting back to Bruce sitting in front of the computer screen, and it's at a weird sort of up and back angle, so he looks very two-dimensional. It's a very, very odd choice of the way that they drew them. And then everybody else just sort of looks very angular, or weird perspective, cut to the side. So I don't know if that was in the storyboards or, you know, based on who storyboarded this, if it was something that was, you know, the artists that were working on it. But everybody looks a little bit off model, which did throw it off a little bit for me in a couple different spots. I think for the most part, I like the final setting of being on the mobile, the boat, like the ship. You know, is kind of a cool setting. I wish they had gotten a little bit more play on the outside. I think it would have been cool if you had the arena maybe outdoors, and you know, you could have played with the water or whatever, done something a little bit different. But it was fine. There were a couple of cameos, we already mentioned. We had Gotham Square Gardens, the abandoned Square Garden as the setting for the original Ring, but actually there was a nice little nod to the original Batman the Animated Series and then the new Batman Adventures with another setting, just a few scenes earlier, still standing after 40 plus years or whatever it was at the time. We had a very familiar setting.
That's right. So in the flashback where we see Boxer training Ace and all, where he's sort of holed up with all of his other vicious dogs, it's none other than the stacked deck down on the Gotham docks. So that place still a hive of scum and villainy some 50 years later. So I appreciated that little nod, as that's that they're apparently still in business. But and then as mentioned, when Bruce is in the alley and he's putting the flowers down, he comes across this member of the Jokers who it's kind of a fun double reference, as a lot of the different Jokers gang are based on actual sort of famous clowns of various types. Some of them are based on Joker and Harley, but this one in particular is based on the famous opera story, The Clown of Pagliacci, which is also kind of a fun double reference, speaking of the Joker, because if you're familiar, there's a very famous scene from the Adam West Batman show where there's a performance of that opera going on, and then the clown rips off his mask to reveal none other than Cesar Romero's Joker underneath the mask. So that's a pretty fun little double reference to throw in there with our one Joker's member that we see this week. So I appreciated that little nod as well.
Yeah, it definitely love those little cameo spots, and blink if you miss them. We know how much James Tucker, of course, loved and was influenced by the Batman '66. So probably had some sort of hand in that. If I had to place money on this. Overall, I think most of the design stuff, even if it wasn't visually appealing, it's designed to be ugly. I think most of the action in that final fight scene with the dog and the viciousness of it and some of the violence that we don't typically get to see because it's this gigantic creature is done really well. I love the flow of everything. I love the way that Batman is just kind of constantly throwing different things. It's a rapid movement. He's jumping, he's flying up, he's kind of bouncing off the walls. Like you mentioned, he grabs his belt buckle to use, he's shooting batarangs. So it's a very fast-paced final, 2.5 minutes of that fight that really ramps up the action there and creates a pretty fun scene. So despite maybe feeling like people were off model a little bit and there not being as much action as maybe in a typical Beyond episode, I went with a pretty strong 7 out of 10. What about you?
Yeah, I went just 1 point higher. I went 8 out of 10. I think that final bit in the arena is just really, I think, over the top, and like I said, some of the more violent sides of it with the creature grabbing a hold of Terry and tearing up the suit, and Terry shooting the grappling hook into its mouth and then sticking it into his belt, which is electrified, and then dropping the thing, and just again the look of that creature with it has this yellow viscous snot pouring out of its mouth and nose. It's just a horrifying thing to look at. Which makes sense for what it's supposed to represent here, which is this sort of failed experiment with this Sarah Stone before Boxer had perfected the recipe or whatever. So yeah, overall I think it's a pretty strong episode for visuals.
All right, Liam. So moving on to our third category of the day, which of course is music. We had Christopher Carter responsible for this week's music. Not gonna lie, not a ton stood out for me. Mm-hmm. We of course are back here with Batman Beyond, whose music, looking back at it, we've talked each and every time we've covered this, really was a break from the norm. And with as many of the shows that we've covered and the long gap between episodes, it is interesting to then go back to the Beyond soundtrack and hear just how different this is from the original Batman the Animated Series, and then even into the new Batman Adventures style of music, or the Superman Superman the Animated Series style. It is a complete departure. We have heavy guitars, of course, rock and roll, lots of whining electric guitar solos. And that continues in this episode. We get it almost immediately as the scene with Ace in hot pursuit of Boxer in that very first scene is accompanied by a theme that's somewhat derivative of the Batman Beyond theme. So it sort of follows the same path, but isn't quite the same. And then we get some more somber, softer music with the flashback and the Ace origin stories. Some more
we
general.
do kind of get an Ace theme in this episode that plays when he and Bruce meet, and then a few more times, and we end the episode with it as well.
Yeah. That the softer keys and the heavier guitar that come in, especially in that final fight scene between Terry and the monster dog, were the ones that stood out for me. Anything else besides the Ace theme stick out for you?
I didn't have many other notes other than that Ace theme. Yeah, I think it's definitely the music in the final fight is kind of what you expect. The sort of classic, very fast-paced, drum-focused, drum and guitar-focused Batman Beyond action music, and I think that is maybe what made the Ace music stand out to me a little bit more, is because it's a lot more softer. You have what sounds like a regular piano, and then some synthesizers and things like that brought in as well. So that's probably the most unique music that we get out of this one as far as Beyond goes. I ended up settling on a 6 out of 10 for my music score, just because like I said, I did appreciate a little bit of a change in the norm as far as the theme that plays a few times for Ace and Bruce, and kind of the way it bookends the story with them reuniting at the end. But otherwise it seemed like pretty kind of another night at the office for our Batman Beyond music.
Yeah, it's good. I also gave it a 6 out of 10. Nothing really jumped off as being super unique or super memorable. I will say that the as Bruce places the roses down on the ground, and then the shift as the clown comes up behind him and Ace leaps in to defend him. There's a nice ramp up of the guitars in that moment also that really punctuates that scene. So there's some good stuff here. Nothing that I felt was terribly unique or that would stand out from our typical Beyond music, but we do love the Beyond music as it stands. So some great compositions there by Mr. Carter.
Absolutely.
All right, Liam, moving on to our final category of the day. It is going to be voice acting. Pretty large cast for an episode that didn't feature that many different characters. But I don't know how many memorable names that we'll have here. I'll be interested to see if our players here are notable for any other roles outside of this episode. But let's talk about this week's voice cast.
Yeah, some fun kind of minor ones. We have one we've talked about a couple times before, Chick Venera as playing the chauffeur in the flashback, Bruce's post-Alfred chauffeur. And, of course, voices Ferret on Static Shock. A couple of times we've covered that character. And that's a fun little bit just because he's just this cowardly little guy who's just obviously there for the paycheck. And,
right.
And his reacting to Bruce and the whole situation is pretty fun. But, elsewhere in the cast, we do have a few notable names here. Playing, there's a female cop who arrests Boxer in the flashback, is played by Tasia Valenza, who voices Poison Ivy in the Arkham games. Does a lot of other voice acting in video games like Metal Gear Solid and a few others. So fun minor role for her. Some of the hangers-on of Mr. Boxer. We have Peter Onorati, who's another one of those character actors we'll see pop up in a lot of like Law and Orders and stuff, but most recently had a recurring role on the SWAT TV show. He plays Ozzy. And then we have Jim Wise, who I recognize as the gym coach from Even Stevens. Okay. The original Shia LaBeouf vehicle. He's also in Showgirls and a bunch of other TV and movies, but he plays Maddie as well, one of the other hangers-on. So a couple of notable guest stars in small roles. And then, of course, if you have any kind of animal that's going to be a central focus in an episode and you need anything beyond just the stock dog bark sounds that you probably have in the Warner Brothers library, you know Frank Welker's going to get a call, and he's going to be doing ace noises and noises for the giant mutant bulldog that we see here.
The legend animal voice supplier.
That's right.
He's your go-to if you need him. If there's any sort of animal sounds in a cartoon, it's probably done by Mr. Welker. So
pretty much
a fantastic job. I mean, I don't know how do you rate it? Like, he sounds like a dog. It's good, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
It's great. Excellent.
Absolutely. So it's always fun to see his name pop up. And then playing our main villain of the piece is a gentleman by the name of Bill Smitrovich, which was couldn't really find a lot of notable things. Kind of another character actor. A lot of one episode of this, one episode of that type of actor. You might recognize him if you see his picture, if you look him up on IMDb. But playing our villain, I think he might have more dialogue than anybody in this episode, or darn near close with Bruce and Terry. I mean he's good as he's a little one note, I think, but he is kind of this. Just like a scummy, like, New York thug.
He's a sleazy, skeezy dog fighter.
Right. And I think
Boxer.
And I think he does his job in that way. Like, it's not the most nuanced performance you've ever heard, but it's what was asked of him.
Yeah, he's fine. I didn't think there was anything terribly memorable, but it wasn't a bad performance. It wasn't as if they'd brought in a ringer and or a well-known actor that performed poorly. It's just it's fine. It's passable.
Yeah,
I'd give it like a B.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And then, of course, we have Will Friedle as Batman / Terry McGinnis / Wally Wings, and of course the late Kevin Conroy as Bruce Wayne. Mm-hmm. That's the best stuff in the episode, is their interactions when they're talking about Ace. Bruce, who's sort of projecting this air of like, Ace is going to be fine, and you don't have to focus on him, focus on this criminal that's out on the streets and taking down this dog fighting ring, but sort of in the more private moments when Terry's not there, you can just, again, like we talked about in plot, you can see what Ace means to him at this point in his life, and what it would mean to him to lose that dog would be almost as tough as maybe losing Terry at this point to him. Like he means so much to him and has helped him through this very dark period in his life. So I think, not surprising, it's Kevin Conroy. Yep. Of course it's good, but yep. I think it's like we talked about in plot. It's just nice that he had a little bit more to do. He's not just there to growl some exposition at Terry as he moves on to the next scene. He actually has a pretty big role and is kind of the emotional core of the episode, so I appreciated that.
Yeah, you get to see some of, despite the fact that he is supposed to be this grumpy old man, essentially, at this point, Kevin Conroy's performance does evoke a little bit of emotion and concern. Even if it's when Terry isn't around, when Terry's around, he's putting on this facade of, well, he's gonna, Ace is a fighter, he'll take care of himself. But then when he's alone, he's where are you, boy? What did he do to you? As they're trying to discover the identity of this person that he was chasing down. So there's definitely more emotion that he has to show in this particular episode than maybe in a typical Beyond episode. I think he shows even more concern for where Ace is than he did where Terry was in the prior episode that we covered. Yeah, but that's probably up for debate. All things considered, though, I think everybody does a pretty solid job here. I didn't think anything stood out as amazing, but I think everybody did a good to solid job here. So I ended up with a score of 7 out of 10. What about you?
Exact same for me. So yeah, 7 out of 10. I think our two leads are strong this week, and that probably brings the score up a little bit over what was otherwise a pretty average output, I would say, from most of our guest stars. But our leads bring it up a little bit.
There you go. All right, Liam. Well, wrapping things up here, we'll get our final scores for the day, totaling everything up. I end up with a 25 out of 40. What about you?
I'm just a couple points higher at a 27 out of 40.
Good news is we are above our first scores of 2022, so these scores are indeed higher.
Starting out on a higher note.
That's right, absolutely. Maybe this year will be better than the last.
Fingers crossed.
But let's talk about rewatchability here as far as this episode is concerned. Ace the Bat Hound's origin story.
Yeah.
I think it's a must-watch.
I think I'll go with you on that one. I think putting in, if it was just an Ace gets lost story, I would probably say it's skippable. But the fact that we get the Ace origin and we see the first meeting with Bruce and everything, I think that puts a little bit more meat on the bone.
Yeah, I'd say as far as Beyond episodes are concerned, yes, it's a must watch. Even with the goofy giant steroided up dog as your main antagonist at the end there, but it as far as overall DCAU, not all that important, I guess. So maybe it falls into the one thumb up area here if we have to give a thumb or two for our scores here.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
All right, Liam, well, we'll begin to wrap things up. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in for this week. Don't forget, if you would like to support the podcast, we have a myriad of ways to do that. The first of which is to subscribe to us on your favorite podcast app. Leave a 5-star review on Spotify or Apple Podcasts if you listen on either of those platforms. We'd very much appreciate it if they allow you to leave a little blurb about what you like about the podcast. Please do so. We very much appreciate that. That helps with algorithms and moving us up on getting more ears on the podcast and more exposure. So we very much appreciate that. In addition to that, you can also head over to our anchor.fm/DCAU review. There is a link there to directly support us if you wish to donate to that. You can also head over to DCAUreview.com and click on the store tab if you want to pick up a piece of merchandise, a sticker, a mug, or a shirt. You can support us that way. Also, another free way to do so is to support us via social media, of course, on Twitter or on Instagram at DCAU Review, or head over to the aforementioned Pod Tower, youtube.com/the Pod Tower. Like our videos on there, subscribe to that channel, and get some great content not only from us, but check out Tim Talk's entire catalog on there. They've already covered this episode, so you can check out their review of this episode and check out some of the Watchtower database videos as well. I don't think Ted's done a Batman Beyond PlayStation game review yet. Stream.
I don't know if he's done Return of the Joker or not.
We'll have to get him on that if he hasn't. But all right, Liam, we are continuing here in the very first month of 2023 with our future reviews, and that means, unfortunately, as we've talked about, not a lot of Batman Beyond left. So next week is another Zeta week. Are you excited?
That's right. Zeta month somehow bled over into our show once again. So we will be back as you said in the world of Zeta, in the lane of the Zeta project.
Same world.
Yes, same
somehow.
world. As you always remind me when I start to say that. But we will be tackling. We're trying to get through this, so we're doing 2 episodes next week. Episodes 4 and 5, Change of Heart, and the Next Gen. The next couple of chapters in our Zeta adventures as he continues to look for his creator. Hopefully, we'll find some silver linings in those gray clouds.
Are there 26 episodes of this show
there
total?
Sure are.
All right,
and we've done 4 so far.
All right,
or 3 so far.
All right, so we're gonna knock out. Hey, just think about this: if we do 2 more for the rest of this time, we only have 13. 5, 20. We only have 10 more episodes after this.
That's
true.
We'll
have to cover.
Yep.
So the countdown begins. Cannot wait. It's actually I can wait. I can wait. But we'll tackle both of those episodes next week. It'll certainly be one to remember. We might have a lot of fun with our review there. So those end up being a lot of fun because we don't have emotional attachment to them, and they're not very good, as we've discussed. So, but here we are. We signed up for the DCAU review, and we can't not cover something that's technically in the DCAU, I guess. So, go figure. But until next week, I am Cal.
And I'm Liam.
And we'll talk to you on the next episode of the DCAU review.
Adios.